Thank you to those on the line. Time got away from me. It is 3:33, and I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the regular September meeting, the Georgetown Divide Public Utility District Finance Committee. And the first thing we have on our agenda is the roll call, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Do you roll call us? So take it away.
Okay. Member Miller.
Here.
Member Hellick. She is absent. Member Gorence.
Here.
And Chairman Fisher.
Present.
Liaison McDonald.
I thought we heard him earlier.
Yeah. He's on mute.
Mitch, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
Okay, and Liaison Stovall.
Present.
And then presenting for staff today, we have General Manager Nicholas Snyder and Office Finance Manager Jessica.
And I will just mention that Secretary Hellick was not just absent. She had let us know that she had some matters to take care of. We're expecting her back, I believe, next. So
It's definitely an excused absence.
Director McDonald off mute, present.
Thank you, sir.
that will bring us to the Pledge of Allegiance. Miller, would you be willing to lead us?
Sir. Pledge allegiance to the flag. State of America. To the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Brings us to item number 2, the adoption of today's agenda. Have
I move to adopt today's agenda. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to our public forum. I think the folks who I see present here today are pretty used to how we do that. So I will let you take in turn if there are any hands raised, anybody online, and I don't see anybody in our audience today. So anybody online have any public comments today of items that are not on the agenda?
Seeing none.
Seeing no hands, that brings us to our next item, approval of minutes from the Thursday, August 24th meeting.
Move to adopt the minutes of the Thursday, August 24th meeting. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Moving right down the list to item number 5. General Manager Schneider, if you would take those informational items, and you can go ahead and take them all in sequence.
Sure, I'll go start with financial reports and I'll open that up to Ms. Buckle and any comments from either the public or the committee on any of the reports that we have in the packet.
So included in this packet are, we, from the last meeting, decided we were gonna move just for finance committee to the budget to actuals, doing that quarterly. So those are not included. The next ones will be in October. And then full cash for August, monthly check report for August, vendor purchasing report, and the purchase order report.
And just for a refresher, folks who may not have been here or want to look at the recording, the reason for going to quarterly from monthly on the budget to actuals. Do you recall?
Mhm.
There was a request from committee member Lawrence.
I think it was mostly just because it doesn't really hold an accurate representation of where we are at for the, at least during the first quarter.
Particularly during first quarter, yeah, when things are all finishing off for the previous fiscal year.
Well, and especially during the first quarter, we're still accruing back to fiscal year 23. So it's not 100% accurate because a lot of those revenues that come in are going to be moved back to the last fiscal year. So you'll see it skip around monthly until October.
Okay, agree. So rather than presenting information that was moving around, still wait until it's worked out for the year. Okay,
And I will give a brief update on some things that we have coming to future board meetings. We are going to be proposing some amendments to the CIP, and it has to do with work that we are proposing for mitigation, fire, and the erosion that has resulted therein. So we are trying to kind of ramp up at the moment to get some silt fencing and other materials purchased and bought so that we still have access to affected areas in the winter. Last year, one of our biggest challenges was the rains and the snow, and not being able to access the area. So we're hoping to kind of mitigate that this year by, rock and some additional material purchases to help with that. So we will come back to both the committee and to the board with some amendments to the CIP. And just for the committee's edification, I will make note that we purchased a new vehicle for the fleet. That was part of the CIP. It's a 2023 Ford F-550 utility truck. So if you see that driving around, it's I don't even think it has 60 miles on it yet. It's very, very new to the district. So that was just approved and just purchased. So I believe that's all for letter A. I'll open it one more time just for any kind of comments from the public. Seeing none, move on to, oh, I'm so sorry.
You said that was a 550?
Yes.
That's a big truck.
Yeah, and so the reason we were buying the bigger ones is because the towing rating is better, the gearing is different.
Good.
The 350 that it's replacing, which is not necessarily we're getting rid of the 350, we're rotating that to maintenance. The 550 will be able to tow our Vector trailer and excavator much more efficiently.
Super.
Okay, moving to letter B. So this is gonna be the first in a long line series of updates that is going to result in a cost of service update. So many people may know this as a rate study. It is typically also called a cost of service update. So what we're doing is we are in the process of putting together an RFP that will go out to multiple firms that do this type of work. At the moment, we are still waiting on a few pieces to come in that will be a portion of this cost of service. So that is going to be the Castle study, which should be done before the end of before the end of the calendar year. We are going to present the salary survey at the next board meeting for acceptance. We will begin negotiations with the different unions, and so all of these will be taken into account for the cost of service analysis. So this is just kind of a preliminary update to the committee that this is where we're at. We're very, very, very in the infancy stages of this, but starting to kind of move forward. Any questions from the committee?
When do you expect the study to complete?
I anticipate it'll take about a year. So end of next calendar year. No firm timeline yet.
Yeah.
I will open up letter B to the public, and I see Cherie with her hand raised. Please, Cherie.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm kind of confused where we're at. This thing in the packet where it says report to finance committee. What does that refer? What agenda item? It's got all the graphics.
That's letter D. I apologize.
Okay, so that's for D. All right, that's all I needed. Thanks.
And then, thank you for that, Cherie. So letter C, I actually kind of gave an update on that as part of the CIP, but just I guess be aware that there is going to be some adjustments to budget and CIP from the mosquito fire. So I apologize. I jumped the gun about 30 seconds. So if there's any questions for C, any other questions for the mosquito fire or any kind of mitigation?
Those costs are gonna be included in the litigation final amounts.
They will, they're already actually included. So we will have updates for the board on the litigation effort soon. We have kind of been compiling all of the costs and then future costs and stuff like that. So there will be an update soon.
I've still been keeping track of all the interest rates for our different accounts too, because they requested that information.
Yes, that was a very new thing that they just asked for.
Yeah, so that they're calculating future interest rates as well.
It's anything we had to pay money for. They're actually calculating and giving us an interest rate back of what we could have invested that money at. and a loss. And so, they asked us for, what our current investment rate is, what, where we have our money parked, and how much we would have lost in tacking that on to the end of the litigation. So I'm gonna move on to letter D unless there is any questions for letter C. Letter D is a presentation, so I'm gonna wait for Elizabeth to get that pulled up right now. And this was a request from the committee on what the water budgeting is going to look like. And so this also will take into account as part of the cost of service, but this is kind of what the state is going to look for from us. And I will say that this is a little bit of a robbed presentation. So if there's anything in here that you have questions about, we are using this from Regional Water Authority. I think that's the next one. And basically this is gonna come from the SB 606 and AB 1668 legislation, which was more commonly termed the Making Conservation a California Way of Life. And they recently just came out with the final report for this of what budgeting will look like. And I say final report, it's not the final report, it's the final to the almost final report that's coming in the future, because we're not quite there yet. But there is some language that will be presented by the State Water Resource Control Board, which we'll be testifying to on October 4th. So that is something that we will be in present and testifying before the board on kind of our challenges and how these different pieces of the puzzle don't fit for us and how we may have to have different pieces cut out for us. So turn the page the right way. So you'll see on your screen or on in your packet, there are 4 basic categories that they look at, and a couple of them have been set by legislation and a couple of them have been set by standard. So the first one is indoor residential use, and this has been set by SB 1157. Basically last year, Senator Hertzberg decided to take the original GPCD numbers that we had of 55 gallons per capita per day, or GPCD, you may hear me say. So he took that and he reduced that down to 47. And eventually in 2030, it will be 42 gallons per capita per day inside your home. So this is only the inside component. This is the toilet flushings, this is the showerings, this is the dishwasher use, this is laundry. So this is also anything you hear me say when I do say per capita per day, it's not an attack or a fine on any individual citizen or any individual household. It is a provision for the entire district. So you have to look at this as, there are fines associated with this, but there are no fines associated with a homeowner who takes a 20-minute shower. There's no fines associated with a homeowner who likes to do extra laundry. So those are all kind of common misconceptions that are around the industry and around, the media. And so we have to be really careful to listen to media sources and understand that some of them aren't real. I won't use the common nomenclature that other people use, but you can understand where I may be coming from with that.
Since there's not a cow in the neighborhood right now.
It's
Would it not be true, though, that the state, in their typical fashion, would lay it on the district to go find who the problem makers are if you can't meet your goals?
So we have very limited enforcement powers because we are a public utility district. We are not an enforcement agency.
Okay.
So that would fall on the county or code compliance for them to do that.
Local government gets to be the bad guy.
Unfortunately, yes. Luckily, it wouldn't be us. I mean, we can go out there and we can ask, we can try to encourage.
Yeah.
But ultimately it would fall on us to be the ones who were fined. So
yeah.
Would you as a ratepayer be affected in the long run? Yes, because the fines would ultimately be spread throughout the ratepayers. So it's, in a roundabout way, I see how it does affect the individual ratepayer, but I guess what I'm trying to say is when you hear in the media $1,000 fine per day and all this other stuff, I want to make sure that people aren't, thinking that we're coming to Andy's house and we're gonna say, Andy, you owe us $1,000 per day because you used too much water in your shower last night. That's not what this is. So, that one, again, was set by standard, so that is already done. We can't really dial that one back. The only way to dial that one back would be to re-legislate it, and that would have to require someone opening this legislation back up and having a new bill passed. Okay, I'm gonna skip to the very end because the two in the middle are a little bit, the fishy ones. So at the very end is water loss standards, and this is also the one that has been legislated. So this came about from SB 555, which was, I wanna say 2013 or 2014, and it is the water loss standards. So the legislature gave the State Water Resource Control Board the power to create a water loss standard to determine how much each district loses and how much to mitigate each loss. So it's not necessarily we want you to lose this much water, it's we want you to lose this much percentage less water. So we now do water audits. So we look at all of our metering, what goes into our treatment plant, what comes out of our treatment plant, and what goes and gets metered to homes. So anything that is lost throughout the system is then calculated into a water loss percentage of water that is made.
This is just treated water.
This is just treated water, no raw water. Yeah, just treated water. So the new meters really help with the district losing water, because when a meter fails to the off position. They don't ever count more water that goes through your meter. They always fail to zero. So a lot of that was calculated into these water losses, and it's more of it's that we didn't lose the water, but we weren't counting the water. So that now we are able to count all this water. We're able to understand all these water losses, and our water losses are actually really good. We have some, but not as much as other districts. So right now we're doing pretty good on that standard.
And Nick, is all this counted from treatment plant to spigot, or is any of it counted from Stumpy Meadows to treatment plant?
It is strictly from water treatment plant. So once it has been treated, fully treated and put into the system, into the pressurized system, is when it starts to get counted. So nothing in the raw water conveyances, nothing in the canals, nothing in Stumpy, those are not counted. And then anything that is below the treatment plant in the raw water conveyance system is not counted. So anybody who receives irrigation water, this is not part of the water loss standard. And anything that is lost through either evaporation or through infiltration of those facilities is not counted in water loss. The only thing that's counted is treated, pressurized water systems. So then these next two are kind of similar. You have the outdoor residential use standard and you have the commercial, industrial, and institutional landscape standard. So basically what this is a calculation of how much water is potentially could be used in the outdoor space of the district. So it is a term that before 2015, I had been in the landscape industry since the mid-90s and never ever heard of the term irrigable. And so the state of California made up whole new English words. What is irrigable is something that is the potential to be irrigated. And this is the definition that we have. So this irrigable acreage is, they look at GPS footage of, not GPS, excuse me, aerial footage, excuse me, of the district, and they get a basic accounting of how much irrigable acreage we have here. Originally, it started out as approximately 1% credit for the district of our total acreage was irrigable. We have worked that through several iterations to about 7%. We still don't feel that that's fair. So we have some methodologies and we have some abilities to go back and do ground surveys and to have a physical site inspection survey. And so those are all of the things that we are currently anticipating to have to do with the state. So that 7% will likely go up. I can't tell you how much, but that is still part of the standard.
So the higher the percentage, the more allocated
Correct.
to the district.
Yeah, so you have more water to basically water your lawns, water,
Does this include ag?
it does include ag, yes. Yes. And so part of our variance on this standard is the fire suppression issue of having to deal with heavily wildfire areas, having to deal with defensible spaces. You know, we are required to maintain a defensible space around our property by California and El Dorado law. So then we have to basically go back to the state and say you can't penalize our residents because they are being told to do this by law. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Okay.
Right on track,
Okay.
exactly.
And so those are the four, and so the commercial institutional is the same general standard as the residential. It just has to do with the commercial, industrial, institutional. And so what they're trying to do with a lot of that is to get rid of the dress turf, it's called. You know, I've done a lot of turf removals in my day, and if you only walk on it to mow it, you probably don't need it, and so that's what we used to call it, dress turf. There are other things that we can get variances for. So some of the more typical variances are ag variances. So for livestock, horses, they've started to include chickens and goats and, you know, all of those types of things. We can get a variance for those. We can get a variance for fire suppression. We can get a variance for evaporative coolers. There's about 8 of them, and I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't have all of them.
They're in here.
Okay, then
I don't have a page number. but-
that's fine. We can get to them when we get to them. So anyway, what this is gonna do is you see how there's a plus sign between all the pictures, and what they're gonna do is they're gonna take all of these and add them together. And they're gonna determine what our water budget is as a district. And they're going to tell us, you have to use this much or less than all of these boxes combined. So there's a couple of ways where we meet this and a couple of ways where we don't meet this already, and it has to do with that outdoor standard. It depends on what percentage we're able to get that to. Generally, we need to get it to about 12 to 13%, and we have already met the standard. Any less than that, and we're kind of in a fuzzy area where we have to do some conservation or apply for some variances. So that's where I'm working on with this, and that is what I'll be testifying to on October 4th is, you know, what variances that we will be needing and how we feel that the residential outdoor use standard has lacked a firm process to correct any of the misgivings. I've been doing this for multiple districts since 2015, when this all started, and I have seen it in multiple districts be a problem. So it's not just something that's isolated to us here on the divide. This is something that is statewide, that everybody's kind of having an issue with outdoor use standards. So I believe that there's going to be quite a bit of discussion regarding that. So we can go to the next one. Yes, please.
I was looking at the service area population times 365. Are they taking that as our customer list, or are they taking that as the population?
So typically you have an active number of accounts, and then they give you a factor to multiply that by. So typically in like our urban water management plan, you take the number of connections because it's total connections and you multiply it by 2.5. Within this, it is residential connections, and sometimes they give you up to 3.7 to multiply by. That's how many people in a home. And so that's how they determine the GPCD. Now, again, you can apply for variance to, if you're in a dense area where you have, you know, multiple families living in one residence, or you know, you have several ADUs, you can apply for more population based on your district.
But the population number is based on our customer list, correct? Not the population list.
It's not based on, are you asking about like the census?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of people here that are part of the population that don't use our water.
Correct, it is based on our service list.
Okay.
Yes. So, the water targets, again, this is kind of what I said before, but this is based on overall water use by the water provider or the water district. The targets are not set for individual customers. You'll never guess how many people I had come to yell at me and said, I use more than 55 gallons in my house, and how are they gonna make me, I can't wash my dishes, I can't do my laundry, and you know, it's not that set in stone. Basically here, we use about 130 to 140 gallons per capita per day, which is what, don't quote me on that, don't break that.
Just, okay.
Including outdoors of capture.
Including outdoor, and that includes everything. It's general, I mean, it's different at different entities. Per person, which is underneath what the standard is for where we need to be. So that we're doing a really good job. All the water conservation that we've done over the last several years has really hit, and we're doing a good job, and we're not overusing water. So we just have to keep moving in that direction. We can't, you know, go and everybody turn on their faucets all at the same time. We have to continue to conserve. We have to continue to encourage people to use, you know, the right amount of water, be efficient with the water they use. You know, I don't think anybody will ever tell them that they can't use water if they need it, but we don't want to use it if we don't need it. So again, this is from the Hertzberg bill. So this is a good visual representation. Currently, we're at 55 gallons per capita per day. In 2025, it goes to 47, and then in 2030, it goes to 42. So this changed from 55 to 52 and a half to 50. So they reduced this by 8 gallons per capita per day in the 2030 timeframe from what the original 606 and 1668 legislation said. So that's what Senator Hertzberg did last year. Move on. Okay, so here again, what is irrigated versus irrigable, not irrigated? So they have these two different categories. Irrigated, obviously we know what irrigated means. It means it's green, it means it's being maintained, it means it's got irrigation going to it. So you have this irrigable, not irrigated, and that is the potential to be irrigated. So a lot of what we are having here in our district is they give us the not irrigable acreage because they see the canopy of the trees and they don't assume that anything needs to be irrigated underneath it. And so that's why a site survey or a ground survey needs to be done for many areas within the Divide community. Yeah, you go one more, sorry, same. So, and then moving on to the water loss standard, we all talked about this. So we have these audits that are done, and it's all a form that you start to plug in your meter data from leaving the treatment plant and all of the stuff that we bill. So we plug that into a form, and it kind of spits out a number of how much water loss we have. Now, this is a special one because of this has actually been a process that's been going on for 2012, I want to say is when this was originally passed, 2012, 2013, I can't remember exactly, it's been a long time. And we now have to come into compliance by 2028, which is a little bit before the rest of it, which is 2030. So 2030 is all of the whole water budget, but the water loss portion is a 2028 compliance date.
How is treated water used through fire hydrants addressed through this water line?
So that's another argument that we have. And that's another thing that we have to deal with as a kind of a unique geographical area. Because we have lots of dead ends and we have lots of water that needs to be flushed in our fire hydrants. And so those are all, we're hoping to score variance points with those. Most firefighting is typically, they do meter that and they report like approximately how much they use to us. Obviously, we don't get an exact to the gallon.
Yeah.
But we do work with the fire departments so that they can tell us how much water they're using. This is the same as what we already talked about. Okay, so here's the variance. Oh, wait, sorry, one more. Where? I cannot, turning the pages. No, I'm not turning. No, we skipped, go back to.
No, we didn't.
Sorry, we skipped this one. I apologize. We missed the variance. I want to go over the variances really quick. So it's.
Before we get to that, on the page before, there's landscape budget factors. What are those?
Oh, so. Are you familiar with evapotranspiration by chance? Okay. I'll to take this, the dead ice there, you know.
How much water leaves the leaves of blades of grass and leaves.
Okay,
Correct. So evaporation and transpiration is, evapotranspiration is two different pieces. You have how much water is being evaporated off the ground, and then how much water is being left through the transpiration of the plant, as exactly as Chairman Fisher said. So this is a factor. Typically on a hot day in the middle of summer, you lose anywhere between 0.2 and 0.3 inches of water. And so when you go back in and you put water down, that's how much water you have to put back in to make up for the what's been lost. And so this plant factor, this landscape budget factor, is based on an ET of 1, which an ET of 1 is basically watering like a corn crop. How much water you would need to take a water corn crop. So the 0.8 is 80% of that ET factor. You can have credit for doing 80%. But as we move forward, you get less and less. And so now in 2035, they want us to use 45% of the water that needs to grow that acre of corn. And that's how ET factors work. And so I didn't want to get into like there's a whole like science behind.
I'm sure there is.
I could, this is what I used to do. I used to work in landscape. And so, we could talk about ET and all the different factors that go into it. And it's a pretty in-depth process. They use the MWELO, which is the, I knew I shouldn't have said it, but it's the Municipal Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance of California. So basically, these numbers come out of that MWELO document, which is also approved at the state level.
So the efficiency numbers, I guess efficiency increases, or the demand for efficiency increases as these landscape budget factors go down.
That is correct.
So that will just become part of the calculus of the overall allowed or budgeted water use, is that?
Yeah, so as we move forward, our budget allotment goes, and it becomes less, we have less available to the citizens.
So we need to know that now to
Correct.
understand what we're in for in 2035.
Exactly.
Indoor, outdoor, everything.
This is just outdoor.
Yeah, but I mean, it also is reducing.
You're correct.
So I mean, basically, they're trying to regulate so that there's less use all the way down where you go
That is correct.
and all across the board.
Correct.
So when I mean indoor, outdoor. Okay.
The difference that, we back in 2015, you all remember Governor banging his hammer, banging his hand on the thing in Phillips Canyon, Phillips Ranch, wherever that is, where there was no snow. And he's 25%, everybody's gonna conserve by 25%. This is kind of the as a water industry, we came back and said, listen, you can't just blanket us all and say 25%, because we've done things that have reduced the amount of water we use. You have to look at each individual area and region to see what we've done. You can't just blanket us all. This is kind of the answer to that. This landscape factor on the coast doesn't, it has less effect than inland, where, say, the desert or the mountain areas where you have more changes in temperature, you have less moisture coming in. So we have a little bit more credit for how much our landscape factor will be here based on our ET. So they still look at your ET of what your individual is, and then they take this landscape factor and they factor into what your ET is gonna be.
I'm gonna assume that there's no stipulation for the kind of winter that we just had, where every lake is full and we're letting it all run out into the ocean.
I will plead the fifth on that. Moving on to the variances. So, here's the ones I forgot. Good thing my brain, works as well as it does, because I have them written down here. So evaporative coolers, horses and our livestock, seasonal populations, so that's like your Airbnb crowds. Landscape irrigated with recycled water, soil compaction and dust control, ponds and lakes to sustain wildlife, irrigation for vegetation for fire protection, agricultural uses, and the others to be determined are some of those that you mentioned for fire, and they are decontamination byproducts that we have to deal with. And so those are the other, when we flush, it's a decontaminant byproduct that we have to flush for. So when you have stagnant water in your system, then you end up having trichloromethane, you end up having other things that get into your water, you end up having less, chlorine residual. So these are all things to keep the water cycling through the system. And unfortunately, it costs water to maintain that water quality. If you would like to move on, keep going.
Can you address the potable reuse on that same?
So we don't use it.
Okay.
I can address it. Potable water reuse is, you may have heard of what toilet to tap was in the past, and that is what potable reuse is. There's two different methodologies. You can either get it directly to the customer, so you take it out of a water treatment plant, you pipe it directly to people's houses to drink, or you can infiltrate it into the ground and you can suck it back out and you can pipe it to your customers. So those are potable reuse.
There's no relevance to our district.
At the moment, we do not, but we are exploring some things to do with the wastewater system in ALT. We may not end up doing direct reuse, but we will end up using some recycled water. We have some ideas on how to use some recycled waters. So this is just kind of how everybody's doing locally. You can see, everybody kind of has to make these cuts. I kind of stole this from RWA, so these are all the RWA agencies. So everybody has to do the same thing, so it's not like they're penalizing us. Keep going. One more time. So here is the what's going to end up happening. So now the next phase in this is CII performance measures. So they're going to start looking at the other pieces to the CII, and CII, just for those, is commercial, industrial, institutional. They're going to start looking at what they call process water. And so process water is how much it costs how much water it takes to do the process or to do the thing that you need. I.e. if we're making dog food, how many gallons of water does it take to make one bag of dog food? And then we're gonna look at all the different dog food manufacturers, and we're gonna make sure that we're all kind of in the same ballpark. Somebody's not taking 20 gallons and somebody's not taking 5 gallons. Because if that 20-gallon person, they need to figure out how to be more efficient. So they're gonna start to look at all of these. Now, we are a little bit lucky, I guess. Our commercial volume is not really where we don't have a ton of commercial volume here. So this will be a much easier process for us. We don't have industrial or, institutional, huge manufacturing facilities like other areas of the state. So, but this is the next phase in this process, and that's going to keep moving forward. So keep going. So this is kind of the where we sum it all up. The reporting timeline for this is going to start on the January 1st, 2024. So they have given us a preliminary GPCD. At the moment, we're well within it, but as things continue to evolve, we have to start reporting on this monthly to the state so that we can basically stay within this requirement. So here is the state board enforcement. So January 2024, they're going to start issuing informational orders to make sure that we have met or can meet these goals. In 2025, they're going to start doing written notices. These are kind of written warnings that you either do or do not meet the ordinance. And then by 2026, then you're gonna have a conservation order if you do not meet it, where they're gonna force and mandate you to do it. By 2027 is where they start imposing the fines, if you are still out of compliance. Now, what I've heard is, $10,000 fines or $1,000 per day, depending on how you're, you know, what blatantness you are doing to not do this, or, now, the caveat to that is, anytime I've ever seen somebody get fined, they've always worked with that district. For some reason, if we can't make it, we can't do can't make the goals, they will work with us. And then if you end up having to pay a fine, in the past, they have given that money back to the district to do water conservation methods. So there's only one district I know of that has been fined and has not been gotten the money back, and that is the city of Beverly Hills. So the fines are definitely something that we don't want to have, because I don't want to have the state here breathing down our necks, but it is something that potentially could come back to help us do things. So
what kind of reporting requirements are there?
there are monthly reporting requirements that we have to do, that Adam will basically be required to go in and report the water usage that we have for all those different categories. And so it's not actually gonna be all the different categories. It'll be like we use X number of gallons or X number of cubic feet, and then it'll see it, how close we are to the right number, what our budget is. So they're gonna tell us, you need to be within this number, and then we're gonna tell them, here's where we are.
And this is regardless of how much raw water we have sitting up in that lake.
Does not matter. I will tell you, my previous agency, we had 25.4 million acre feet of water sitting underneath our feet, and they did not care a lick.
You know, I understand. It's just. Conservation is not a bad thing. I think we do it, certainly do it in my house. I see the reporting requirements is, you know, do we expect to have to increase staff because of these reporting or anything like that? No.
We're already collecting that data.
Okay.
Honestly, the meters that we purchased make that less onerous.
Questions, is the cost of producing treated water dependent on the amount of water that's treated?
Yes and no. There are costs that are associated, based on if we go to do less, then we have to change things. If we do more, then we have to change things as well. So yes, the costs are associated based on the amount.
All right.
And revenue, right?
And
Revenue based on usage.
as the cost of service will go up as the use goes down.
That is correct.
Okay.
And, you know, I will tell you that we have had that argument with the state, and every wastewater district in the entire state has, I'm sure, sent a letter to the state to tell them that if you start conserving too far, then our facilities don't operate anymore. And the state listens, they hear it, but this is they keep moving forward.
My last water district, we conserved so much, we're on a tiered rate system, which is fairly common. I mean, it's going away, but it's common. And so if you use like over 1,000 cubic feet, your rate goes up to this. And if you use more than that, your rate goes up to this. We conserved so much water that they had to raise the rates because they were going under, they weren't being able to pay their bottom line.
That was one of my next questions. And certainly that's what PG&E does.
Yeah.
We don't. Is there any thought about going to that
Tiered rates.
tiered rates?
So it'll be presented in the cost of service update.
Yeah, okay.
The problem with tiered rates is they become a sticky point because you're penalizing folks for using water.
Right.
So instead of tiering the water usage rates, the cost to get the service charge is what is typically looked at. The water costs the same, no matter how much it costs, you know, where you're producing it costs the same to produce the same gallon of water. And so that's where the most legal challenges come from, having that tiered water rate, because
It's forced conservation though, I mean.
It is, and you can't do that because that's not how the law says you can bill for water, basically.
Yeah, it's not a cost.
You can,
Yeah, I thought we couldn't even use tiered.
you can, as long as you do budget-based rates, which is a whole can of worms that,
We're not going that way.
no, I doubt it. But it will definitely be explored by, when they do the cost of service, they'll have multiple options of how to do it and it will be all discussed. You know. So that is if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to, or open it up for public.
No, that's excellent.
Do we have any idea how much of our total treated water goes to the commercial and industrial?
I don't,
Sector.
unfortunately, when they switched over to Tyler, all those accounts got just lumped into, it's just all you have one. But we are working slowly to open that back up and to reclassify all those.
We are tracking it per account, but it's just not in the GL. So when you look in the GL, the revenue for water sales is either treated or irrigable water, raw water. But within Tyler, each account has a commercial and industrial and multifamily, that it's a different report to pull out. And that's why I was saying we're already tracking it, because that's part of the water board reporting, something that Alexis does, but we are tracking it. It just doesn't show up on the GL because those different accounts, GL accounts, weren't put into place. I tried to set that up this year and our CPAs were not having it, so.
Yeah, it's something we're working on. We're trying to kind of bring that back so we can pull a report for something like that, but it's not as easy right now. It has to be, we have to do a couple of format changes.
In some context, as I recall, as far as precipitation that comes into California, that half of it goes to the ocean, 45% goes to irrigation, and we're really talking about 3% of the water available when we're talking about treated water. Is that?
It's about 10%.
10%, that's a context. Okay.
Yeah, basically, you're right. It's
About 10% is treated.
about 10% is municipal water. Yeah, that's what we call it.
So if we were to save 20% of our total treated water usage, we would be saving statewide, we'd be saving 2% of the total state available water. And of course, naturally, the state has passed laws for goals of those others as well, right? The water going out through the Delta, they've passed goals for them to reduce too, I'm sure, right? And ag water, I'm sure those have been passed too, right?
To provide an answer for this question.
Somewhat rhetorical.
That's the fifth again.
Yeah.
I will again, be very, very careful in how I answer that question. It is definitely something that I think they're looking at, and.
But today, the squeeze is being put on 10% of the water that can be metered. Sounds like the legislation.
Context.
Okay. Thank you. Got it for the record.
You can say things that I cannot. I think we could open it up to any public comment. I'm seeing none. I think we can close the informational items, Mr. Chairman.
Let us move on to our action item, which concerns our November and December meetings. This is item number 6.
Yes, so every year we kind of have an issue with the November and December meeting. Unless the committee wants to come and spend Thanksgiving here, we can bring the turkey and the stuffing and the cornbread here to the district. And the next month we can open presents together on Christmas. We have a bit of a problem. We've identified December 7th as a potential move date, and it would take both November and December meeting, and would set it for December 7th if it pleases the committee.
We're gonna have an overflight.
I'm sorry?
An overflight.
Oh, that is December 7th. Oh.
Yeah.
They live in infamy.
Yeah.
we will, I'll get a Cessna to fly over us.
That works for me.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And thank you for thinking of that.
Yeah.
Foresight.
So, I think we'll just
That's a
require
motion.
a quick motion and a vote.
All right, well, let's move to adopt the action item to reschedule November, December regular meetings onto December 7th.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's passed. Any reports from finance committee members?
No.
Wanted to thank Elizabeth for being vigilant to get our packets out to us all nice and early and complete.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, for the work on the finance items. We really appreciate you guys a lot, taking good care of it. Any items that anyone wants to suggest for our December 7th meeting?
Besides the flag. Well, we have one more meeting. We have
an October meeting. Okay,
So yeah, if you,
for the
have
October
something
meeting.
either for either of those, we can explore that.
And we'll be
Raise
discussing
hand.
this audit.
So, yep, Liaison McDonald, go ahead.
I just had a question, General Manager Nicholas Snyder, as to the status of any flood of inquiries or requests to be on the finance committee from the public.
We have had none. We are going to continue to run the advertisement, but as of now, we have had no interest.
That's all I had. Thank you.
So I'd be on future agenda items, I'd be happy to keep this water conservation budget item as regular if needed as you find it, because it sounds like some very critical formulas are being hashed out right now that are going to affect our future.
Sure.
And a lot of that has to do with outdoor use and how they look at it. So if you get any more information on how those formulas and allotments are panning out, I'd love to hear that on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would second that.
That brings us to our next meeting date. Oh,
There was one other thing. We talked to several meetings ago about a tour.
And so I
If that's not doable, that's fine.
no, we're working on it. I have had a request from Director Stovall. I know that our office finance manager would like to go, so it has not been lost on me. I apologize that I have not been able to set anything up. Yes, I am in the process of working on that. We actually have a tour coming in the beginning of October, and it should be pretty good because then I can take you to some areas where the fire damage had hit. And if anybody would like to go, I'll send out an email and we'll may have to rent a van or something to take everybody up or something, but I think that's a good idea.
Right, they're certainly clearing it. There's
Oh,
42 lumber trucks an hour, I think.
Oh, it's, if you go up there and you see it, it looks like complete devastation, so it's bad.
Well, because they're using it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that the price of lumber will come down. You know,
They're gonna bring the prices down, nobody raises prices anymore.
all right. That brings us to a reminder of our next meeting on October 26th, right here, same place, same time. And just to reiterate again, our November and December meetings will both be changed in their regular time to one meeting on December 7th. And with that, if there's no other comments, I will adjourn.
We
Going
can have a
once.
motion.
Motion
Move to adjourn.
Do we have to motion?
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.